Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we are taking a look at installing the Curt A16 fifth wheel alongside with a kitted rail and custom installation brackets. That way you can get a fifth wheel installed on your 2018 Ford F-150. Now, more times than not, a half-ton truck is not something that you see a lot of fifth wheels in, but there are smaller fifth wheels that would be a great option for this. Our neighbor today has a small camper that's a fifth wheel. And honestly, it really does a great job of putting the weight right over the axles, so you get a lot of capacity. Now, something I will point out is this is a short bed, so it would get pretty tight normally. He's got a tonneau cover here as well, but he found that he could use a wedge and a sidewinder kingpin on his camper, and that's going to be a rotating box. So that really takes away having to get a slider on this. Now, with that being said, this is a great fifth wheel. It's lower capacity, but really so is a half-ton truck. The A16 comes in at a 16,000 pound gross trailer weight rating with a 4,000 pound vertical load limit. The jaws are a really nice design. You have a dual wraparound, so as your kingpin comes in, it's going to auto kind of latch this back. Now I'm going to put a little pressure here. Obviously your fifth wheel is going to be stronger than me, but as that latches, you can see this automatically closes down. You have full wraparound and it overlaps each other, so you really get a nice sense of security. And it's hard to see on this truck, but there's also an indicator on the back side that's going to let you know if it's fully engaged or not. It's a nice go no-go gauge. It would be terrible if you try to pull away thinking you're attached and you're not, so this really takes the guesswork out of it. And if this is aligned to where you can put your pin in, generally you're going to be good to go. Now, the A series is a really nice feature because I always think of the A as articulating, which this is a fully articulating head. It can rotate front to back, side to side. So not only does that make it easier for hooking up, but it's also going to take away a lot of the jarring that you may get going down the road. It's going to absorb that rather than transferring it directly to your truck. So overall, A16 is going to be a great fifth wheel. I think it's a really good match for an F-150 like this. A lot of nice features, the indicator, a dual wraparound jaws, articulating head, included lube plate, which is nice. You don't have to worry about getting this all greasy, especially if you plan on taking this in and out. It's also fairly lightweight compared to a lot of the other fifth wheels, especially because you can remove the head. That's going to save a lot of weight, and the base really isn't bad either. So if you're an occasional fifth wheel tower and you want to take this out to get access to your bed and use it as a truck again, this is actually a pretty easy one to do as far as weight. Also with that, your rails, they do stick up just a little bit here, but really it's not taking up a ton of space in your bed. So that's the great part about a fifth wheel, is when you take it all out, you really aren't left with too much taking up, space that you might want on your truck. Now this kit is a full kit, so it comes with the rails as well as a custom bracket to be able to bolt this all up to your truck using factory holes. So the only drilling required is the holes in your bed to be able to bolt everything up. Sans that, everything uses the factory locations in the rails, which is really nice. Now, this is going to be an ISR standard, which is going to be standard width of your rails. So even if you were to change out to a different fifth wheel, it's going to bolt up with no issues because it follows that standard. Overall, not a bad little kit. When it comes to the installation though, none of it's particularly hard. Really it comes down to getting your brackets kind of loosely in place to give you a template to drill. You get this rail in place. You're going to want to assemble the legs to your base. That's going to give you the length for the front rail. And none of it's terribly hard except for when it comes time to torquing down the hardware. The bolts really sit real close to the frame rail. So as far as getting those torqued down to a fairly high torque standard, it's going to be kind of tricky. So I ended up using a crow's foot attachment. It's not a hard installation. You're just going to want to really have some strength ready, because you're going to want to torque all those down to make sure that it's safe, and there's really no easy way to get around that. So if you watch this whole video and you plan on doing it yourself, or maybe not, maybe you kind of say, you know what, I don't have the time, the place, the tools, or even want to do this myself, but I still want a fifth wheel in my truck, you can use our dealer locator to find someone close to you. You'll simply put in your zip code, you'll find a list of shops near your area, and you can have them take care of this for you, so you don't have to worry about the install, and you can be out towing in no time. For you DIYers that are going to be tackling this yourself, I'll walk you through all the steps and give you all the points that I can give you to make sure that this is as smooth as it can go. And before you know it, you'll have your fifth wheel installed and towing down the road. So let's take a look at that install. Before beginning our installation, two things that you're going to want to do to give yourself a lot of space to be able to get everything bolted up is remove your spare tire, get that rolled out of the way, and also we're going to take this heat shield off. It's just going to be, we have 3 bolts that are going to be a 13mm socket to get those taken out. Now to really start getting into this, we're going to get our side rails mounted up. And the first thing we want to do is feed our hardware into the frame rail so we can get these side plates in place. And what we're going to be using is the large diameter carriage bolts. And then we'll have these spacer blocks. Make sure that you grab these specific ones. And then with our pull wire, what we're going to do is feed it through this hole in the outside of the frame. Now on this year of F-150 being a 2018, we're going to utilize this hole and this hole. The other side did have a few extra holes on the driver's side, so this one's pretty easy to figure out which one we're using. And what we're going to do is grab the coiled end and feed it through the holes where the hardware is going to go. We'll reach through here and get that coiled end pulled out. But make sure you don't pull the wire all the way through. So what I like to do is just put a nice bend on it so it kind of keeps that in place, because if it pulls through, we're going to have to redo this step. And from here, we're going to take our carriage bolt and our spacer block and thread it on. Now you can take the spacer block, and it's probably easier and feed that in first. And then you can grab the carriage bolt and do the same thing. And then as we pull this, it may get caught up a little bit, just kind of jostle it around a little bit until we can get it to pull through. There are mounting points on the underside here for our heat shield or exhaust hanger, so we'll get that to dance around that real quick, and then we should have it like that. Now before taking off our pull wire, we're going to leave this on until we get the side plate on, but we need to put the square spacer on top of this. So grab that and we'll feed it on. Now we're just going to do that same process for this hole, and then we'll have our side bracket ready to go. Now they are going to be side specific, so I'll show you how that looks. Now for our side rails, the way that we're going to have this mounted up, you'll see the split here. This goes around that square bed corrugation in the back. So this flat plate with the 2 holes should go towards the front of the truck. So we'll guide these through the corresponding holes. So on ours today on the 2018 will be this hole and this furthest one out. So take your pull wires and feed those through the holes. It is pretty wide here, so just be careful. You don't want to scratch up your fender. And then as we drop this kind of in place and feed it up on the frame, we're just going to get those pull wires to where they're going to feed in there. Now we have some Bilsteins here, so a little tighter here, but just shift this around. It should sit like that. And we'll get our bolts pulled through. Once you get them pulled through, you can grab the serrated flange nut that matches the carriage bolt, and we'll loosely put that in place. Now underneath, they suggest using a punch and punching through the center of your elongated holes Now, I kind of struggle with that because this sits where this box is. So you're trying to punch through 2 layers of aluminum. You could really hit it hard with a punch and maybe see the dimples up top, but if you have a spray-in bed liner, you're really not going to see it. So I'm going to find a different way to do this that I think is going to work just the same. Really, all we're trying to do is get the holes or at least a reference of where we're going to drill down to mount it up to where that hardware passes in. So you really could just kind of hold this in place and run a small drill bit underneath, but I'll find a way up top and I'll show you how to do that. So they give you the measurements of where the rail is going to sit based off measuring from the back of the bed to the front of the rail. And that's going to get us, I think, really close to where those dimples really aren't going to make a huge difference. That in conjunction with the spacers that go around the bed bolts, I think we're going to get this dialed in pretty easily to where it's going to align with our brackets below. So the first thing I want to do is measure my 28 and 9/16. Now, something to take in consideration if you do have a spray-in bed liner, normally on this edge it'll add about 1/8 of an inch, so just account for that in variances. But I'm going to measure on each side, and once we get that measurement, what I like to do, I have a chalk marker, but put a piece of tape here. That's really going to help us make sure that it's going to be squared up perfectly. Really the biggest part of putting in rails like this is measuring and making sure that you're doing a good job of following that. It'll set the tone for the rest of the installation. So we'll get this measured out. I'll just put a mark here. And this is a chalk pen, so this is easily able to be taken off. But I'm just going to align my tape with that mark. And then I'm going to measure from a few points. If you get one side and the other and a center point, you're going to get this nice and square. So I'll go ahead and make sure that I get those measurements as well. So I taped that reference line. Again, that's just going to help us get this guided into place. But the other thing that I'm going to use is our spacers that go around the bed bolts. So the hole is going to go towards the cab. So set it up like this, and it should be pretty well in line with this corrugation. Get those on both sides, and then we'll take our rail. We're going to drop this in, and if you want to help guide it along, we're going to be using the 3rd hole in front and back on both sides. And what I recommend doing is once you kind of have this dropped into place, measure from the sides here to make sure it's even. But already I can tell that my spacer, I can see that it is aligning here. So that's looking good, but I'm just going to get one quick measurement side to side. So I've got this all measured out, and a good way to double check is the hole in the center should be dead center with our corrugation here, and then those 3rd holes are going to be dead center with this raised corrugation front and back. And also having those brackets in place, I can see pretty quickly that this is going to be a perfect shot. Everything's aligned well. So at this point, what I'll do is I'm going to mark out where we're going to drill, and so we'll do the rear center hole, so this is towards the tailgate, and then we'll do the 3rd hole in on the front, 3rd hole in on the back, and then we're going to do the other side. Now we can move our rail out of the way and grab an 1/8 inch drill bit. These pilot holes, if you did end up doing the dimple, it should be pretty dang close to these, but this should be able to drill right through our bracket. We'll double check underneath to make sure that it all aligns, and we'll enlarge these a little bit later. But for now, let's get these 5 holes drilled. Now underneath, you're going to want to grab your bracket and press it against the spacers so it's flush, and then slide it up. And you should see that those holes are aligned perfectly within those slots. If they're not, then you're going to want to double check your measurements. So check on both sides. But right now, it's about dead center, so it's looking good. Now that we know that it lines up, we're going to enlarge the holes to account for our carriage bolt. And I recommend having a carriage bolt here. That way, once you drill it out, you can test to make sure that it passes through. I'm using a 1/2-inch drill bit. I've always found that if I go a little bit larger, it gives us a little bit of tolerance. You don't want to go too large, but also not too tight to where it's, you know, rigid in place. So we'll go through, we'll get these all enlarged. So with those enlarged, carriage bolt passes in, nice and easy. Let's get all these metal shavings cleaned up. Now, being that the bed is aluminum, galvanic corrosion is a real thing when you have dissimilar metals. And the way that they account for this is going to be these barrier tapes. So essentially anything that's going to be touching aluminum, we need to make sure that we're putting tape on it. The ones for the rail, it's actually kind of nice. They lay these out extremely well to where it should align. Just get those carriage bolt holes aligned on one side. And then we'll run this tape back, and it all should align pretty well. So we'll do that on both sides. If you want to knock out the other rail, we're going to have to do that eventually, so you can do that as well. So I got the tape on the rails on those bed bolt spacers. I just took the ones that are the square with the hole and just cut them to where this whole surface is covered. I did notch out where our bolts are going to feed through. So we'll get those in place. And then our U-shaped spacers, this is to prevent, as we tighten down hardware, from crushing the corrugation. So I just covered up the one spot that is going to be touching our bed. Now we're going to double stack. We have 2 of these, so we'll get these in place. And now we'll take our rail. Not that it's important, but it isn't side specific, but it says CMI, so if you want it facing the same, just kind of align that. And then we'll drop this in place. Everything should line up pretty well. And as far as carriage bolts to pass them down, you're going to find that there's going to be longer ones and then shorter ones. The shorter ones we're going to be putting in the middle, so I'll just get that one in place here. And then our longer ones will just pass through, making sure they go through those spacers properly. My tape's kind of stopping it from feeding through, so again, that's why it's important to make sure that tape's out of the way. Now where the bolts pass through, it should be aligned with our bracket as we see here, but we do need to put a barrier around this aluminum. And to tell you the truth, this probably would have been a lot easier to put on our bracket here, but what I'm going to do is just push up the bolt a little bit and have the tape side, not the backing side. I'm just going to feed this through, and if you want to curl it around the bracket here, that's not a bad idea, but basically I'm just going to try to get that bolt to go through the hole so we can get a sticker mounted up on this bracket. Another option is really just to peel this off, place it on here and cut that hole, but main thing is we're protecting this from touching the aluminum. And we're going to be doing that for all 4 of the sides here, so we'll get these in place. Now, what was helpful for me to get this in place was I had my videographer go up, pull the bolts up, and I just slid it in. I didn't peel the tape off. It's going to hold that barrier in place. If the paper falls off, it doesn't matter because that barrier is going to be there. Again, would I do this differently? Yeah, potentially. Maybe take this rail off. You could tape it on there, but we got it all in place, and that's the main thing. So what we'll do next is grab our spacer block. Should look like this, and we're going to slide this over the bolt. Now you will need to raise up your side bracket, and then we're going to get the serrated flange or serrated flange nuts started on each of these. So we'll get all 4 done on the carriage bolts on each side. And the spacers are offset, so with this side, I want to raise this up to where we have most of the support here on our box that's welded on. So that way it's not going to crush anything down. It's not touching any aluminum at this point, so it should be fine. But try to get those aligned to where it's going to give it the most structural rigidity. It might also help too in this step. Those carriage bolts a lot of times want to try to push up. So if you can have someone hop in the bed and just step on the bolts, honestly, to keep them in place, that'll make this a lot easier to thread in. And then for that center bolt, we're going to use our spacer block here and then get that tightened down. So we have our hardware all started on our rear rail. To get the front one, it's actually going to be pretty easy. You can take your base and drop it into the rail, and then we'll raise the front up and then slide this rail in until we get it to drop in place. So now what we'd like to do to make sure that the tolerances are good is pull the base towards the rear of the truck and push the rail all the way forward. And everything should be squared up, but double check. You can use the corrugation. It should be aligned just by nature of our fifth wheel base. And as far as holes that we're going to be using, it's going to be a mirror of what we did here. So we're still going to use the third hole in, and we're going to be using the forwardmost hole for the center. Now you may notice that there are no bed bolts here, so we don't have to worry about using those spacers. We're going to be using those underneath the truck. But we are going to use a double stack U-shaped spacer in the center. We're going to make sure to put that barrier tape on there, but really it's going to be just a repeat of what we did back here. So drill your pilot hole, double check, and then go back and enlarge. So if you've done this, you kind of know what you're getting into. So we'll get this all ready to go with hardware, and then I'll show you if there's any other variances that come along, but from here it really should be just the same. Underneath will be slightly different, so I'll show you that. Now, pretty much going to be all the same. I did mention that we're going to be using the bed bolt spacers underneath, and so I just put it in the same orientation. I did put my tape, so it should mirror it, and you're going to find obviously that space-wise you may have to raise the bolt to slide this into place, but with a little finagling here we can get this in place. And again, that's just going to keep our bed from crushing down. If you need to, you can push this up, slide the spacer in between them, and then we can push that bolt back down. Now, you can get fingers on the other side as well to kind of guide this into place, so if you need to do that, by all means. And then once we have this in place, it's going to be the same concept as far as putting those spacer blocks underneath. I already got this one in place, so we'll just continue on until we get this all hand tightened with all of our hardware. Now, I was able to get all of the hardware started, and I'll admit, it is tricky to kind of reach these and get them started, so having someone either step on the bolts when you do it, or just putting something heavy on it to where it's not going to push up, is really going to make your life a lot easier to at least get that serrated flange nut started. Now, as you know, it's pretty tight in these spots, so we're going to begin to start to snug everything down. You might want to go up in the bed and shift, again, that base towards the rear of the truck and push the rail just to get everything seated. But we're going to come back and get these all snugged down, and then we'll torque them. So when snugging them down, you're going to want to start with the rails, those bolts first, and then snug down the frame ones. And the same goes for our torque wrench. So to get access to these, unfortunately being really tight, the best way I would suggest is going to be a ratcheting 3/4 inch wrench on these bolts. So I'm going to go through and get these all snugged down. Now for the frame bolts, it's going to bump up to a 15/16 socket to get these snug down. So I'll get these all tightened down as well. Now we just need to refer to the instruction manual to get the torque settings, and we'll go through and torque them all down. Now you're probably wondering, well, how do I get a torque wrench in there? Best way I've found is a crow's foot attachment, something along the lines of this. It's still going to allow you to torque it down, but get into those tight spots. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but this is going to ensure as you're towing your fifth wheel down the road that it's going to be torqued down properly to be able to do that. So we'll do these, and then we're going to jump over to our frame bolts. I won't be able to use a 1/2 inch torque wrench for that, as it does jump up. So just make sure that you're adjusting the torque accordingly for your bolts. Now I'm sure you struggled just like me, if not more. Having a lift made it somewhat easier, but it's just not very easy to get to these. And with a torque wrench for that setting and a crow's foot, it is very tedious. But I got everything torqued down. So at this point, we have our rails installed. We're gonna head up and get our fifth wheel all put together. But at this point, if you wanted to get your heat shield back on and your spare tire up, now's a good time to do that. Now for the install, more than likely, you probably already put the feet on our lower section of the fifth wheel to get that base measurement. But if you're watching this all the way through before starting, it's pretty simple. You're just gonna have the center section with the legs, and you have 3 height adjustments. So if you wanted to, you could get it dialed in based off of your camper. And really the best way to do that is have your camper level, and you can measure from the ground to the kingpin slide plate, and then you can measure from your bed to the top of the head of the fifth wheel, and then do some math, and you can figure out roughly where you need to set this. So it's pretty easy to do. You can always adjust it later, but we normally just set it in the middle, and you can fine tune from there. We'll pin this up. So we'll just drop these in. In fact, I'm going to do my cotter pins on the outside here. Now we can drop our head in place, and this is a nice feature, especially if you don't plan on leaving your fifth wheel in the bed of your truck. You can separate the weight of the entire fifth wheel by removing the head, and it saves quite a bit of weight here. So the rubber, we're going to work that in, and then once dropped into place, we'll grab our large pin and pin it up. And then you'll also need to assemble your handle. So you just have some screws here. So you'll slide that into place, and then you'll get this to where it's all torqued down. So all the instructions will have that. And really all that's left to do is get your trailer all hooked up. It does come with a lube plate, which is really nice. You can put that on your kingpin and hook up, and you'll be ready to rock. Hopefully this video helped you get your A16 and rail kit installed on your 2018 Ford F-150. I try my best to make sure that these videos are as helpful as possible, but if there's something that I missed or wasn't helpful, maybe you found some tips or tricks to make this easier, please leave a comment or some pictures in this page. It really helps us make our videos as best as possible for neighbors like you that are going to be tackling this yourself. So with that all being said, thanks for joining us, and enjoy your traveling with your A16 on your F-150.